spooky waifu? That was water. Oh my god. Yeah, that vid looked amazing. He's like drinking and like messing up the scrolls now.
Bottoms up, brothers! One final toast before we crash the Celestial Palace!
And they all died. Wow. Wow. Remember that journalist that criticized the game's lack of side quests? Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Well, oh, this is IGN. The most shameless channel. You can't talk about Wukong after your review. Oh, did they say it was bad or something? I don't know. All right, that is pretty cool. That is pretty cool. So I guess if I had gone back a second time and beaten that same monkey shell boss again, then we would have seen that trailer. As someone who hasn't read or seen Journey to the West, I only know bits and fragments of the story from other media, you know, because they've added Wukong in so many video games and stuff that I've played over the years. I know bits and pieces of like his lore, but I don't know the whole thing. There was, you know, one of those little episodes in between every single chapter that told part of the story. People in chat were actually a huge help. I know that sounds weird after the experience we had with this game. They were a huge help with helping me figure out some of the stuff, like the guy with all the blankets, and he was actually one of the bosses, and I didn't realize that that was him, and it was like mutated. Like there was the pig and the spider was another one, you know, and there was, and also it's different animation styles. I remember one of the animation styles was like kind of 3D. It reminded me of the old Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer movie, the way it looked. And then others were like drawn cartoons and stuff like that. That was pretty wild. Okay. All right. While it's fresh in my head, let's do a review. Let's talk about how Black Myth Wukong was for a few minutes, and then we'll wrap things up. So we just finished Black Myth Wukong, for anyone watching this on YouTube later. It took me 44 hours to beat it. I tried my best to go through the game spoiler-free, but at the end of each chapter, I would look up on Google, like, list of bosses in chapter 1. And then I would be like, yep, I saw him, no idea who that is. And anytime I found a boss that I never found, I would backtrack and go find it, because I wanted, the boss fights were my favorite part. So I went back and I did the boss fights that I missed. And so I did every single boss in the game, with the exception of 2 that you had to apparently, like, let's say there's boss A, B, and C. You had to kill boss A and B before you fought boss C, because if you try fighting boss C, A and B join in, and it becomes like a 3-way battle, but then boss C is the last one standing, and then you fight him. So I got to see an epic battle between all of them, but I didn't get to fight the others separately. That's the only one I missed that is known of in the game. I killed every other boss. How was it? A lot of people saying it's a Souls-like. My on-stream title was like Monkey Souls. I don't think that's accurate. It was a kind of open world, RPG with some Souls-like elements, but I think it does it a disservice to say it was a true Souls-like. It did not have the clunky movements of Souls-likes. It didn't have like a true parry. It kind of got a parry spell, but it used mana, and mana was a limited, finite resource. So you could only do so many parries in a fight before you couldn't parry anymore. Unless you went and rested at a shrine, which is bonfire. So it didn't feel like a Souls-like, but that's fine. It's just I'm just saying it's different. You didn't drop your souls when you died, so you never had to worry about that. That was never a concern. But the boss fights were still very challenging. There was a couple of them that took me an hour or more before I was able to get a kill on. So there was still some very tough fights. The gear was interesting. I liked that you could level gear up. So if you had a high level piece of gear that had a passive you didn't care about and a low level piece of gear that had a passive you loved, you could just level the low level piece of gear up with the blacksmith. That was a really good thing, and I ended up using that health regen chest piece that would, if you're below half health, it would slowly heal you up to half. But if you were standing in water, it healed faster. And that was great. That allowed me to kill some bosses without having to do additional attempts sometimes. That was wonderful. The story, for me, as someone who didn't grow up with Journey to the West, it was like Alice in Wonderland. It was just delightful randomness the whole time. Like, dude, I did not expect to be helping my friend, who is a tiny Buddha with a boar head, survive his ex-girlfriend who's a giant spider. No one saw that coming. No one saw that coming. I didn't see that coming. If you haven't read it, you didn't see that coming. No one saw that coming. So like, it was just absolute Looney Tune craziness, and I was just like, that's fine, let's go. So I enjoyed it, even though I didn't know the background of the story. It was a lot of fun. The fights were a lot of fun. I would say I think there's around like 10 bosses per chapter. So let's say there was roughly 60 bosses, right? There was like 4 I would say weren't fun. So like 56 of them, roughly, I enjoyed the fight. I occasionally got frustrated because I was getting my butt kicked, or I'd occasionally get frustrated at chat because they would tell me a mechanic before I figured it out. And for me, the satisfaction is figuring these out. But besides that, the only ones that I got frustrated on were the ones that basically they made the fight tough by making you worse. By making it so your dodge had a cooldown in the mud pit, or your stats are sealed, so you have half the stamina bar and you can't use any special moves, stuff like that. So those are the ones I really didn't enjoy, but everyone's gonna have personal preference, if someone plays the game without any spells, like there was that one ability, and I didn't use it a single time, that seals all your special spells away, but it makes you bonk harder. So it's for people that only want to bonk. So if you were an enjoyer of that skill, you probably would not even have any problem with the fights that I disliked, because I liked all the crazy tricks that he had. Those were really cool. Those were fun for me. So the story was good. The gameplay was very good. Especially the dodges, they felt extremely responsive. Like there was a fluidity and a smoothness to the fight that was so fun. And I think it was really apparent when we were fighting the Yellow Long. That fight. Some people, when I started fighting, some people were like, oh boy, here we go. Muck, this is one of the toughest bosses in the game, some people are saying. And it took me between 30 minutes and an hour, but it was fun. Like the whole, I don't know what game did it first. I'm going to say Bayonetta, because I know Bayonetta did it, but they did the Bayonetta thing where like right when you do a perfect frame dodge, time would slow for a second so you could appreciate it and then continue as normal. That was so satisfying when you would see time slow like 4 or 5 hits in a row because you perfect dodged all of them, and it felt really good. And then especially later on when you got the talents, like when you perfect dodge, you leave a clone behind, then the clone explodes and it would basically do an extra attack's worth of damage. So that was really nice. Gameplay. And while we're talking about gameplay, mouse and keyboard. I played it on mouse and keyboard. It was great. The control, I was able to rebind almost everything. The only qualm for mouse and keyboard is I was not able to bind keys to mouse button 4 and 5. Like buttons on the side of the mouse, it did not allow me to do that. I wish I could. But I was able to like WASD for movement, left for light attack, right click for heavy attack, shift for run. In any game where you have sprint, it should be on shift. That is the proper thing. I bound dodge to V because I'm used to that from Guild Wars 2. So I was using a combination of MMO controls and then shift to run, like like any game with sprint. So the controls on mouse and keyboard was wonderful, especially after coming from Elden Ring, which it was terrible. Aside from that, the music was amazing. The visuals were amazing. Just talking about the audio and the video, really good, absolutely breathtaking. Do I have anything negative to say about the game? I did mention that there was 4 bosses I didn't like, but that could be a personal preference, so I won't dwell on that. The biggest negative thing I would say was invisible walls. I understand the necessity for them. In some areas, you'd be in a huge open area, and you would be running around, and you try to get into a boss fight, and you would get a massive arena to fight in, right? But let's say you're fighting, and you're just like, you're fighting, you don't really realizing it, but you're kind of drifting westward or whatever. And then you go to move out of the way of a boss attack, and you hit an invisible barrier. And you're just like, you're trying to back up, but you're hitting something, and then you die. That's how you find out you hit the edge of the arena. I understand the necessity for keeping the boss fight into a specific location. They needed to have them more clearly defined. They needed to have some, maybe like little pebbles or some rocks or some stalagmites sticking up or something like that. But just something to denote the outer area. Additionally, sometimes the bosses would go outside of it. So you'd be fighting, and the boss sprints through you, you dash through him, he tries to impale you, you move, and you go at him, and then you bounce off the wall because there's a wall between you and him, and then he impales you. That happened to me on the fight with the guy that summoned the wind tornadoes and the fight with the monkey shell. Both of those had that happen. It was extremely frustrating when it happened. I got a little better at acclimating to it, because by the time I got to Monkey Shell, I wiped less than the Wind guy, despite the fact that Monkey Shell was much tougher because I was already getting acclimated to dealing with that mechanic. No mini-map or mini-map. Yes, a map, a mini-map, or a compass would have been nice. Now, if they don't want to ruin your immersion by having it in the HUD, I can appreciate that. But I would have maybe in my inventory, have a tab that just looks like a scroll of the area. It doesn't even have to say you are here, but just some kind of map of the area that maybe opens up as you move around would have been really, really helpful. It would have been really good. I would be pro some kind of map in your bag if they don't want it on the HUD because it would take away from the experience or something like that. What about the grasshopper mechanic that was not intuitive? True, I would say that was, over the grand course of the game, that was one of the only times that there was a interact with this thing that was really weird. And because every time you failed it, you had to go catch the grasshopper again. So it would take a few minutes before you could try again, which added to frustration. So yes, that is over the course of 44 hours, I recognize that that's a small thing. It would be something I would love to see them patch or slightly tweak or something like that, since Steam allows them to do that. Was there anything else? Only on the final fight versus the lightning god, or near the final fight, there was a few times where it felt not fair. In most, in the other 59 fights in the game, if I got hit by something, I was like, damn it. But it felt fair. But he would he would attack me, and I would jump over the attack, and then I would snap down into being impaled, and then he would pull me and then do 40 hits. And I was just like, what the So he was really weird about hitting you even though it looked like you dodged it. But I didn't have that issue on the other 59 fights in the game. So that should not drag down the whole game just because of that one, but it's something that's in my head right now, so I'll say it out loud. What about the grasshopper mechanic? That was, we just mentioned that one. So all of that said, I would say the invisible wall was the biggest thing. The others were much more minor. This was still amazing. I would say that this game, as a package deal, between 9 and 9.5 out of 10 for me. This was amazing. It was really good. Chat, the community sucks. Y'all are awful, despicable, horrible people. In the last 200 games, I have never had people want to spoil me as much as this one. I would have the stream title say no spoilers, pinned to the top of chat would say no spoilers. Every 60 seconds on the minute, Jackals would be saying in chat no spoilers, and then I would be saying audibly occasionally no spoilers please. And then every time I look over in chat, I'd be like, "Hey Muck, did you get the MacGuffin in the wall to your right that's gonna open the clock to your left, and then you get the treasure chest and you can use it to get rid of the tornado?" And I'm just like, I can't remember the last time I stopped a stream out of anger, but last night I stopped playing Black Wukong because I was getting pissed off, and I was like, "We're gonna play Total War. I'm gonna go fight some greenskins." I need a break from this. It was like 10 times yesterday, 10 times like someone popped in and just said some crazy spoiler. And I think it's just like within like the Dark Souls community, which I think that's kind of what's bleeding into this. They think it's helpful to pop in and be like, "Oh, hey, you missed a secret over there. There's a sword behind that brick," or whatever. But I liked the exploration, and then I would backtrack later to see what I missed. But they can't help themselves. They wanted to tell you so bad, and yeah, that was really frustrating. That does not change my rating of the game. That was just a really unfortunate thing as a streamer that was extremely frustrating. But that said, this was absolutely wonderful. Also, thank you to the company for sending me a free copy. I didn't have to pay for it because they were very nice to me as an international internet superstar celebrity sensation. I really, really enjoyed this overall. And there are those moments in video games, chat, that stay with you. Like, I barely remember playing Remnant 2 right now. But the final boss fight is burned into my head because that was magical. This game, that fight versus the monkey shell, when I charged up a fully charged attack, dodged his 82 hit combo, then tried to hit him with my charged attack, and he caught it, slammed me into the ground, and then took it, like looked at me on the ground, and then shook his head and tossed my staff back to me, like, pick it up. I was like, "You mother mucker." And then like later, when I went to drink my healing potion, and he immobilized me, and it went into a cutscene where he stole my heal, I was just like, the audacity of this monkey. Are you serious? Dude, I'm going to remember that. Those were extremely memorable moments, and they so fluidly fit those they were like cinematic moments that they squeezed into a cutscene, but they weren't a pre-rendered cinematic because it had all of my equipment on that I had chosen and stuff like that. Dude, that was so good, and I will remember that for a long time. So I am very glad that we tried this out and experienced this world. Fantastic game. Definitely, if any of you interested, Mukluk recommends. It was good. Positive review. And for those of you who were here all along for the ride, thank you for joining me. Hope you enjoyed it too.